now tuned into the motherfucking greatest.
What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Welcome to the first episode, episode one of the Dad Shift podcast, hosted by me, Lawrence Brown. Um, this is something that I've been wanting to do for a little minute now. Um, I feel like, I just wanted to create something that's, impactful, something that's like helpful for the better good. So after some years of thinking and finally saying, F it, I'm about to get to it, man. Why not? Why not? Why not do it? You never know. So I decided to start the podcast, but I just didn't want to start any type of podcast. I wanted to do something that's more, impactful, like I said, or something that's more educated, or to get some insight to a community that I feel, very dearly about. And that's the community of, being a dad pretty much. And being a new dad at that, the modern new dad at that, I would say. A lot has changed over the years. I can only imagine, from, personal experiences until, whatever, society shifts of society and how they view dads, and how dads have shift their roles over the years, and such. So being a dad, going through the ups and downs, and going through my own personal battles, and into my own head. And most of the times I'm like, man, I just want to talk to somebody about this, or to speak out loud about it, or to be a part of a community, who share the same experiences as you, in today's society. So I feel like, why not start something? Why not, be the leader of that new shift? You know what I'm saying? So why not that be me? Or um be why not be a part of it? Be one of the members, one of the dads that start the shift. So here we are. Like I said, this is the first episode. It might be a little rough, the first few episodes, as I, get a handle of things. But without practice, there's no improvement. So without challenge, there's no evolution. So why not get started? See what we can do. So briefly, I'm just gonna go over what exactly this podcast will be about. Um, Things will shift in the future, but the direction right now, I think is pretty solid. Like I said, some of the things we're gonna be touching on in this podcast, like I said, is the highs and lows of fatherhood, marriage, relationships after kids, you know, raising a toddler, and just figuring out strategies, researching strategies on how to really um, approach that. Because there's so many different things you can do, so many different parenting styles that's out there, and I don't think there's a perfect parenting style at that. But we'll get further into that. Um, we'll be talking about the work life balance, and that the mental health that goes along with that. Later down in the season, in the series, you'll talk about some dad hacks, some survival tactics that we used to survive as dads, whether that's with the kids or with the wife, with the girlfriend, or just navigating through the role of being a dad. And with that, I will be featuring some of my fellow friends that are dads as well, new dads as well, or been dads for a few years. Um, Plan on having some experts, like maybe like some counselors that can give us tips on what's best for our kids these days, and what's some things that we can avoid, or some things we can add into the routine, such. Uh, by the way, my sister, she's a social worker, so she's very in tune with what's going on. So I'm definitely gonna have her on here. Shout out to my sister, Larissa Scott. I know you gonna be one of my first listeners for real. Appreciate that support, for sure. And also shout out to the Aaron Scott. Can't forget the brother-in-law. Can't forget him. Um, I know y'all two going to be the first, to listen to this, just because y'all very supportive, and feel what I'm coming from. And yeah, so those are just some things we're gonna talk about throughout the podcast. Um, I don't want to keep it too like educational, like, I want to keep it as natural as possible. Um, when I have guests on, it might be a little more, it might be a little different, might be better actually once the guest starts appearing, start having different perspectives on, their experiences, and just feeding off one another. Yeah, so a lot of things to look forward to in this podcast. Um, what else we got here? So for this series, I'm gonna do series. I think I'm gonna start off doing series, and might have about 4 to 5 episodes per series. This series, I'm gonna label it lessons learned. I'm gonna label it that for real. Lessons learned. Just let that sink in. If you can kind of feel where I'm coming from. Even before your first kid is born, there's things that you go through that, you know, you wish you had a little more advice, but sometimes even if you had that advice, it when it comes down to the real moment, it hit a little different. Because when you get the advice, you thinking with a clear head, listening, ears and such. So you just soaking in the knowledge. But when something happens and you not in that mode, you in real time mode, ain't no telling what you already was thinking about or feeling like that day or that moment. And when something happens, it's intensify it. Kind of all that advice kind of just goes out the window, and you try to remember what you can do to, mitigate that situation. You know, there's there's some moments that I'm not the most proud of, I would say. I had a couple moments where, um I done a minor crash out, just from the pressure and adapting to the new way, and adapting to, the new situation. It was change. Change is not, as easy as a transition that you might think it is sometimes. Like, it's coming, right? And change is in process, but change hurts, and change um have you in a state of unstableness mentally, but still gotta, you know, be about your business outside of the change within, your new household that's being developed. You know what I'm saying? So it's very hard to, like, mesh the two, and trying to find a perfect way to do that is it's pretty not the most you know easiest way to approach. So I would say, one of the things we need to do as dads and as men for real. um I'm not telling you how to be a man, but I'm just speaking from a personal experience. And so I feel like I can get some type of, advice of when you are in that moment and you have a decision to make on how you react to certain things. So that's what I'm kind of speaking on, is lesson learned is how you react, you know? Um, your feelings are valid. You might, the way you feel is, something that can't be changed or taken away. Like how you feel is how you feel. And you're a human, you're allowed to feel those feelings. If you're frustrated, if you're angry, sad, happy, whatever, you are, well within your lane of feeling those feelings. And it's okay to go through that. But what we must like kind of take focus on or really think about is how you react to the moment. And feeling something and reacting to something is, two different things. And often it's used as an excuse to, go about certain things. And that's like one of my biggest things. This as a person too. Sometimes when a situation is, you know, too much, sometimes I can get a little overboard on how I react to it. You know, I react to certain things of me versus the world type shit. And reality, it doesn't need to get there. How it got there, I don't know. Maybe it's just being a black man and maybe it's just embedded feelings and perspectives as like, you're a black man, you gotta go through this and that. So you gotta approach every day like this and that. And sometimes you fall into that, description and you handle every situation like that, as of you versus the world type. So, um, it's if you want to go about that in other situations, and and sometimes it's needed, but when it comes down to your significant other and her carrying your kid, you gotta calm down. You gotta think about what you're doing. You gotta think about what you're saying. You gotta like you gotta like reel it in a little bit, really think before you act type, you know. Um and this from experience. I know there's like I said, I had a couple situations where I could have really handled it a lot differently, as far as how I react. And and it's very important that you keep your reactions in check as a man, especially just because you're looked upon differently, you know. So if you act, out of pocket, you're gonna get looked at differently. Like even more like when I say differently, the second time, like you're gonna get looked at as like, all right, this man is crazy. I gotta tiptoe around his, emotions because he might go off or he might, do something irrational, like not saying that you are gonna do that, but now that's your reputation, and you don't want that. You don't want that. You want that reputation of like, hey, that's my man. I know he's gonna protect me. I know he's gonna treat me to a certain standard, and I know his mental towards us is in a positive light, and he wants the best for us and our kids, So I feel comfortable around him, type of, So you want to maintain that perspective, especially towards the person you are creating your legacy with. All of that is, very important because you don't want your kid coming into the world with negative aura around you and your partner, you know. Um, all of that is going to do is rub onto your kid. Now your kid is born into it, and now that's just y'all, you know. It's something that happens a lot. There are a lot of situations where the kids are born into you know unfortunate situations and unfortunate energy. Um, and most of the time is due to how we react to situations and how we respond to each other. So yeah, so one of the lessons learned I would say is watch how you react, think about how you react, especially towards your partner, um especially you want to do it for the betterment of yourself as well. If you sit and reflect, after you done crashed out, you probably feel like shit, you know. Now that's gonna attach to you now. Now you just added more baggage to yourself because you couldn't keep your emotions in check. You know what I'm saying? Um, and it's not something you can fix overnight. It's something that you gotta constantly work with, but don't push your partner, you know, in the practice field as you trying to figure it out because you're gonna make things worse. Trust and believe that. um, so yeah, y'all have any comments about that? Feel free to, beat up the comment section and type up your perspective on that. Um, it- it's very important. We're gonna hit on that a lot because most of the things we do is off of emotional reactions, and as dads and as men, we really gotta watch out, on what we do for sure. Um, so we're gonna kick off to the last topic of the day. I would say we're gonna talk about you know preparing yourself for fatherhood. I would say um, things you might want to consider before you think about having a family, or you're in the midst of the production stage of having a family. Um, things I would recommend men to do, new dads to do, is first get you a gym membership. I don't care if it's Planet Fitness, the YMCA. Go get you a gym membership. I'm gonna tell you why after I label off a couple more things I feel like you need to do. Um, New dads, depending on where you at in life, if you are someone where you are, where you want to be, um, you know, cool. But I know there's a lot of dads who might be, when it comes to their job or where they see themselves at the moment. If you haven't finished school, or if you're working a job that you really don't like and you working crazy hours like the factory jobs and things like that, I want you to start thinking about, shifting your career and upping your knowledge for sure. Especially as men and dads, we need to, focus more or put in more focus on our, intelligence and our well-being. Um, I understand like some jobs, might be paying you the bread, especially no factory jobs. But I'm telling you, it's not gonna mix well. When you're trying to raise a family and you want to be there, present, you know, not just making money to, say that you paying for the mortgage or the rent, working 12 hours a day and all that. Like, I want you to start thinking about, maybe shifting, what you're doing for a living, because you kind of want to be there with your kid. Like, you don't want to miss nothing. You don't want to come home always tired because you done put in a 12-hour shift. You know what I'm saying? And trust me, I know some people got to do what they got to do, and I understand that. But at the same time, we also got the ability to do what we have to do to put ourselves in a better situation. You know, when I say go back to school, it ain't got to be like a 4-year university or bachelor's degree or whatever. Man, just get yourself in a cert program, whether it's like tech or something that's needed today that's don't require you to put in so much physical effort. Even though that's needed, the essential workers are needed, and I get that, and I get that. I just find it very beneficial for you know dads to not be in such a physical demanding type of work, because your kids gon' they need you. They gonna need, they gonna want to play with you. They need you as well as that job needs you, or they need you more than what that job needs you for. You know what I'm saying? Um I just had experience working in, warehouses and factories for a couple years. For the first, I would say, year and a half of my kid, I made it work, but what I had to do to make sure I was there presently and make sure, you know, I'm bringing in the money or whatever, man. It was crazy to myself. Like I was really beating myself up, like working third shift to make sure my kids see me throughout the day and to like, at the same time taking classes to make sure in the future I put myself in a better situation, you know what I'm saying? I had to do that, but I should have been took care of that a while back, you know. Um, but that's another story for another episode. So I would say start thinking about where you at. If you're not exactly where you want to be at, you just happen to be there because you needed a job, whatever. Start thinking about, all right, for the my future self, I want my kid to look up to me as something different. I know I want my son to look at me as like college educated, working in such and such, doing such and such, has experience in such and such, and also has his own thing going on. You know what I mean? Um, just just start thinking about that if you are not there yet. Um, and I would say like third, make sure you have a support group. You know, make sure you have a real support group, not just your homies, like some people that's in the same situation that you are in, being a new dad or have been dads and are presently there. Like, make sure y'all stay close and stay connected because you gonna need your friends just because or mentors. Like, you're gonna go through some things, and honestly, you can't put that on your partner, your wife, your girlfriend, because they already going through their own thing. Plus, physically having a kid, they going through their own thing. The last thing they need is you to come to them talking about how you feeling, you know, like they are going to understand, which they probably understand, but look, they going through their own shit. They want to tell you how they feeling, and you just have a different role. That's just not saying you're not allowed to say your feelings to your woman, but in that stage, especially after having a kid, like it's don't do it. Like, you need to get you a community or be a part of a community that allows you to express, your frustrations and your stress. And hopefully this podcast will be that place you can come to and listen to every Monday to gain that motivation, to gain that insight, to hear conversations, you know, of being a new dad and as being a man and, in general. That's I hope this podcast will be your community. So I would say one, get your gym membership because you're gonna need it. You're gonna have some frustrations that you're gonna need to let out, go to the gym. Like, I ain't saying like be a bodybuilder, just go ahead for 30 minutes and just work out that energy you got going on. Two, start thinking about your future, just career rise, or you want to be an entrepreneur, whatever it is, man. Start thinking about it, start planning it, start taking action, you know. And third, you need to subscribe to this podcast because you gonna need it. It's gonna be very helpful to you. You're gonna need a solid community that's gonna give you that, like I said, that motivation, give you that comfort um, in a new journey that you are, going through right now. So it's gonna be cool. We're gonna be good. We're gonna be good. Um, Closing thoughts. Like I said, I am very excited for this new journey that I'm currently on. Um, Getting ready to be a dad of two. I want to invite y'all on my journey. I want to invite y'all in my experiences, and the people I will have on. I'm, I'm just at a different stage in life where, I want to help out. I want to. give back in a way I feel like I'm best at giving back. Um, so with that being said, this is the Dash Shift podcast, reminding you that every shift brings growth. See you later, Kings.